Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another show and another episode of our tactical breakdown series in which we look at the players that Arsenal could, should, maybe will and hopefully will sign this coming summer. And in addition to that, the players that also Arsenal already have on their books and could look to integrate into their team for the coming season. And that is exactly what I've got in mind for the video for today. We've received a lot of requests for this, in fact, video talking about the player that we are going to speak about in just a moment. But first off, if you're enjoying the series again, please give it a like, please subscribe if you're new around here with those notifications turned on so you never miss a show. And a massive thank you to all the people who have subscribed recently. We just hit 11,000 subscribers, which is great, and I much appreciate that, as well as all the amazing comments that I receive every single day. It really does blow me away. So thanks as always to the people who are throwing those kind messages in, and to the people who are throwing some good, fantastic football and debate in there too. But that's not what you're here for. You're here for me to talk about Calum Chambers to you, whether I think he should be into the Arsenal team next season. Should I think that we need to sell Calum Chambers in order to try and get some more money to spend on some other players? Or in fact, do we have a player on our hands already that can contribute and add to the team next season? So let's get straight into the video and talk about the one and only Calum Chambers. Now, of course, we know about Calum being signed from Southampton a few seasons back for around 15-16 million pounds. And his time at Arsenal's been mixed. He's really shown what he can do. I remember the Emirates Cup. I was there at the Emirates Cup for his debut when he played really, really well, actually. He played a centre-back role, which was strange for everyone to sort of see because we signed him when he was playing as a right-back for Southampton. And he came in at centre-back and he has played that position more or less his entire career at Arsenal. Now, last season, he went on loan to Fulham. Fulham, a team that were promoted from the Championship the previous season, and by the end of the season had found themselves relegated back into the lower tier once again. But during that season, Calum Chambers actually won Player of the Season, voted for by the Fulham fans and players for that award, and you can't really ignore that fact. You can't really ignore that someone has been the best player in a team, whether they've been relegated or not. And the fans definitely warmed to him very quickly, and he put in some really good performances for them. But a performance for Fulham doesn't necessarily correspond to a performance for Arsenal. No disrespect to the West Londoners, of course, but it doesn't correlate all the time, and we need to know whether the skills and the abilities and the statistics back up the theory that he was very good for Fulham last season, and if he can translate that across to Arsenal for next season, because we are in need of defensive reinforcement, and Calum Chambers could be the person to do that. Now, I'm going to start off talking about his position, because his position changed a lot when he went on loan to Fulham. Whilst we knew him, as I said, as a centre-back, he actually played a lot of his games in defensive midfield. In fact, he played 20 games at centre-back in the 2017-18 season for Arsenal, and the following season, he played 21 games at defensive midfield. Only 5 games were played at right-back during the 2017-18 season, and 10 games for Fulham were played at centre-back, with the right wing-back slot being played in just once for Fulham. So a massive difference in what we saw the position. And you can see from the two heat maps on your screen, you've got 2017-18 on the screen for you there, which is showing you clearly he's very condensed, very conservative in that right centre-back slot, sometimes slipping over to the right-hand side, moving up the pitch a couple of times when he was playing in that role. But then if you look on the other side to 2018-19, he is much, much more advanced. He's further over the pitch. He's more fluid in the way he moves around the field as well. And there's intensity in that right centre defensive mid slot, which is where he played most of his games at Fulham last season under a plethora of different managers, as Fulham experienced. And that was for good reason, because he put in for some really good performance in that role. But there were some very clear issues with him playing there. You would expect that from a player that's not played that as his main role. But it was sort of seen by Arsene Wenger previously that he could play there. He was deputised there a couple of times. I think actually it was against Southampton once he played at CDM for Arsenal. But he played in that position for Fulham. He earned the Player of the Season. And for whatever reason, I am actually struggling to try and work out why. I'm not saying he didn't have a great season, because I think he had for his standard and for a team that were going down in relegation. But there's some very clear instances where we saw that his role in that position really did falter for Fulham. Now, if you have a look at the screen now, what I'm showing you is an incident from the Everton game in which you can actually see Chambers really pushing up high. He's quite next to one of his fellow midfielders, and that's made the ability for Everton to pass the ball in behind so much easier. And Chambers did this on quite a few occasions. He pushed too far up to his midfielders that he was with. He didn't stay in his position rigidly enough, and it meant that any chance of cutting any passing lanes was lost. You can see in the game against against Bournemouth here with Jefferson Lerma, plays the ball in behind so easily because Chambers leaves the gaps available for him to do that. The midfielders that Lerma's got in front of him are way ahead of him, ready for the pass to be played, and Chambers does not anticipate this and see the players behind him, and the pass is able to be played very, very easily in behind him because he's so high up, pushed to the midfielders, even not in possession. Maybe that's something to do with the fact he's an Arsenal player and we like to press, but I think it's certainly something as a CDM you need to learn how to sit in and be disciplined in that role, and he didn't do that in those games. The final example I'm going to give you is one against Leicester. Again, you don't see him covering those options. Harry Maguire is very easily able to play the ball around him, and he's got plenty of options that he can do that with. Now, I'm not saying Fulham are the most organised team in the world, but you'd hope that Chambers would, as a player who's played for a much senior, a much better side than Fulham, he would be able to take that midfield by the scruff of the neck and position himself and position his teammates in a way in which they can cut those passing lanes and try and intercept the ball better. And the story doesn't end there, unfortunately, with the fall that he had in terms of his statistics and in terms of how he performed last season. So if we talk about defensive duels, in 2017-18, at the top of the screen, you can see the previous 2017-18 stats compared to below the 2018-19 stats for Fulham. Defensive duels, 6.35 with a 32% success rate. And defensive duels in 2018-19, 7.52 duels, and only 21.8% of those were won. A massive drop in the amount of duels that he was winning. Aerial duels dropped as well, 5.18 in 2017-18 with 59.8% success, and 4.85 with a 50% success rate in 2018-19. Interceptions were better, and you probably would expect that from a player playing in that CDM slot compared to the centre-back role. 6.35 the 2 seasons ago, and the most recent season, 6.67, as you can see on the screen there. Losses, 10.12, 50% in his own half, 2017-18, but 11.16 losses, but less of those being in his own half. So you can look at that in a different way. And recoveries, 11.96, 2017-18, 19.4 in the opposition half, and less recoveries in last season, 10.31, but 30.9% in the opposition half, which you would expect again because he's playing in a more advanced position up the pitch. Fouls, he committed more fouls last season, over 1 foul per match, and only one every 2 games for Arsenal the previous season before that. And yellow cards, he was much less disciplined. 9 yellow cards for Fulham last season, with only 2 the previous season for Arsenal. So his defensive side fell. Now, you can look at that in 2 ways. You can either say that he just didn't improve, and in fact he played worse, or you can say he was playing in a team which didn't really help to his standards. He was under a lot more pressure because teams were able to get at Fulham more than they were at Arsenal. But I would argue that Arsenal defensively have always been flawed over the last decade or so, and it's meant that teams have been able to get at Arsenal. So whilst you can say, yes, Fulham concede more goals than Arsenal do, but at the same time, Arsenal aren't exactly a defensive workhorse. They do concede a lot of chances. So to see a dramatic drop in his defensive stats like you saw then, I think actually goes against Chambers, and you can't really use that same argument to say he was playing for Fulham, and so that's why that happened. And it's the same similar story of his passing. Now, passing is obviously a very introverted statistic. It's something that's very akin to the player himself rather than the players around him. Yes, you require the movement of other players for some passes, but accuracy and the way you deliver your passes you'd hope would improve. One, the more you get to do it and the more minutes you get to play, and he definitely got to play more times at Fulham than he did at Arsenal. But unfortunately, the stats are the same. Now, I'm not going to read out all the stats and bore you, but I am going to show you onto the screen and sort of paraphrase them for you. So in terms of what went down from 2017 to 2018-19, his pass accuracy went down, his crossing accuracy went down, passes to the final third and their accuracy went down, passes to the box and that accuracy went down. He made less forward passes, even playing in a central defensive midfield position rather than centre-back. More backward passes were played than were at centre-back for Arsenal, and less accuracy as well. And he received less passes, which I find very odd because he was playing in midfield. You would think playing in midfield you're going to receive more passes for the centre-backs. You're going to feel more passes when you're trying to recycle the play. So the fact he actually received less passes really did confuse me. Now, the only conclusion I can come from that is that Fulham just didn't spend as much time on the ball as he would do at Arsenal, so therefore he received less passes. But still, playing in the midfield, you'd expect him to receive more balls than he would do playing at centre-back. The positives were that he had a 5% higher long passing accuracy and a 6% increase in his through passing accuracy. Two very small stats, two very incremental increases, but there are positives there to look at. In terms of his dribbling, stats on the screen for you again. At the top, the season for Arsenal, and at the bottom, the most recent season for Fulham. You've got more dribbles being made, but less success rate, which is strange for a defender, for a defensive midfielder. Offensive duels, more of them being done, but less being won. Again, and progressive runs. He made less progressive runs from a defensive midfield position than from the centre-back role for Arsenal. I still find this very odd, very, very odd. Now, if you can think, and you can try and come up with some reasons as why this happened, please leave it in the comments. But my judgment, based on those statistics and from the images you saw and some from the performances that you put in for Fulham, is that I would personally be in favour of thinking maybe the likes of Christian Bielik should be someone that we could be bringing in, rather than putting all our hopes on Calum Chambers to be coming in and providing backup in that position. Christian Bielik can play at centre-back, he can play at defensive midfield, just the same as Chambers. The only thing he doesn't provide is extra cover for the right-back role, which you could argue with Bellerin out, maybe we need that, with Ainsley Maitland-Niles being the deputy in that role at the moment. But maybe, I think, we could get, if we signed him for 16 million, he played a really good season supposedly for Fulham, if you look beyond just the statistics, and obviously if you go off that Player of the Season award, then maybe you could say that he's worth possibly about 20-25 million pounds. He's the English player playing in the Premier League. That homegrown talent is worth extra money. And I think if we were to go out and say to a team, look, Calum Chambers, look at him for Fulham last season, one Player of the Season, they really rated him. Maybe he could do the same game for you next season, and hopefully we could get some money for him. That's where I stand on it. But please tell me in the comments, where do you stand on Calum Chambers? Do you think he should be drafted into the team, or do you think we should be looking to sell him and make some extra money so we can bring in players in different areas of different quality? If you've enjoyed the video, I hope you have. Please give it a like. Please subscribe if you're new around here. Follow us on Twitter, the Gooner Talk TV. Follow us on Instagram, the Gooner Talk on Instagram as well. And we'll be back again tomorrow with another tactical breakdown for you very, very soon. Give us a request in the comments if you would like to see me tactical breakdown on a specific player. But if not, great, just like the video. We'll see you again very soon. And as always, up the Arsenal.